Today we're discussing one of the most hyped topics in One Piece, Zoro and Sanji's Devil Fruit powers, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Channel parking within and smash that like button if you enjoy seeing One Piece videos like this one. Join the Nakama by subscribing so you don't miss future One Piece videos and updates. Smashing that subscribe button also means helping us get closer to that insane goal of 2 million subscribers here on YouTube, which would be epic of you. And now without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. So we know Zoro is very powerful, and it's true that he doesn't necessarily need a fruit. But what if I told you that he already has one anyways? It wouldn't be the first time Zoro having a devil fruit was brought up. Even Oda himself played around with the idea before. In a question corner, he was asked if Zoro and other Straw Hats, including Sanji, which we'll get to, were to become ability users, aka devil fruit users, what kind of fruits do you think they would have eaten? Oda answered he would like to see Zoro with Kaido's fish fruit mythical model Seryu. But he'd prefer if Zoro's sword had the Azure Dragon fruit instead of Zoro himself. So ignoring the fact that Kaido has that fruit currently, if he's still alive that is, which he probably is knowing Kaido, I think it's fascinating that Oda revealed he'd love to see Zoro's sword specifically with a mythical zone devil fruit. Not only did he acknowledge it's possible, but even that he'd like to see it. Oda obviously wouldn't reveal Zoro already having a mythical zone sword, but dancing around the idea in a favorable way begs us to explore this possibility in more detail, and it makes a lot of sense once you start looking into it. And yes, in my view also, it would make a lot more sense if Zoro's sword had the devil fruit rather than him. He's still the user of the sword and in a way the wielder of the fruit power by extension. And to all those people who already wrote in the comments that he obviously doesn't have a fruit power because he can swim, well, this would allow him to swim normally while also utilizing a devil fruit power outside of the water. Now, what event specifically made me want to explore this idea more seriously, aside from Oda suggesting it himself? Well, to begin with, I'm fascinated with Enma and the amount of coverage and focus it got during the Wano arc. Enma is one of the 21 great grade swords or 21 excellent grade swords depending on what translation you use. It is one of only 2 known weapons to ever injure Kaido before the present day events of the story. The official Viz translation says Enma is said to split the earth to the bottom of hell and is one of the 21 excellent grade swords. Zoro is warned that only one man has tamed Enma, and that was Kozuki Oden. This kind of personification is also associated with zones now because, as we found out from the 5 elders in the Wano arc, they specifically have wills of their own, and so it's not impossible that the Gomu Gomu fruit, for example, which is actually a mythical zone, was evading the government for 800 years. As we proceed, Enma will similarly appear to have a will of its own, way more than anything we've seen from other swords. We see Zoro use it in the beginning to slice off the coastline, shocking even Sanji. It's not an easy blade to wield though, since it exudes the wielder's ryo on its own. It slices more than needed, and although Zoro has some trouble in the beginning, he actually does better than most wielding it, since we're told a normal swordsman would already be a mere husk if they used it like Zoro did. Zoro being Zoro, of course, accepts the challenging sword. Now the interesting thing is that Enma is the name of the king of hell in Japanese Buddhist myth, the judge of dead souls. This god is associated with a dangerously difficult to control personality. Another bit of trivia is that its size was very inconsistent, since despite Zoro and Oden being vastly different heights, the sword looks normal in both of their hands. Putting all of this together, it's clear that this is no ordinary sword. And at this point already, we might assume that it has some sort of mythical zone human fruit model Enma or model god of the underworld within it. On a side note, the whole god or king of hell idea reflects Roger's and Rayleigh's relationship really well, as Rayleigh too was called the Dark King, while Roger was the Pirate King. I feel like Zoro and Luffy will have a very similar dynamic as well, and we know that Oda loves his parallels. But let's move on because the clues and evidence don't stop there. Zoro uses Enma during the fight against Kaido and Big Mom. He tells himself he's going to have to unleash this Enma a bit more. He eventually gets an opportunity to cut Kaido with Enma during chapter 1002, page 12. Kaido is asked, "What's that?" while Zoro's Enma is glowing. Big Mom says, and I quote, "Look out, that's no ordinary sword." That quote in and of itself is another big clue that Enma is special and a possible hint that it has a zone devil fruit. Zoro uses the move Flying Dragon Blaze and he misses. He does cut off the horn from the Onigashima skull, but even if it didn't land, it's still significant. It was a slash that scared 2 Yonko, and Kaido, who often doesn't avoid attacks, decided to avoid it. Keep in mind, Kaido didn't even try to avoid Gear 5 Luffy's finisher move, so this is a big deal. He also says, how does his katana bear the presence of Odin within it? Here we get another parallel to how Zunesha was sensing Joy Boy's presence in Luffy. And why did he sense it? Not because Luffy was the same as the old Joy Boy, but because they had the same devil fruit. And so it's possible Kaido isn't actually sensing Odin, he's just sensing the fruit within the sword that he's come to associate with Odin. Later, as Zoro prepares another attack, Kaido asks himself, is that katana the source of that strange haki? Zoro uses Black Rope Dragon Twister attack and it actually hurts Kaido, as Killer excitedly points out that Zoro actually cut Kaido's scales. It's also noteworthy that before he launches this attack, Zoro's sword's aura took the shape of a dragon during chapter 1003 on page 10. Kaido too says, he actually cut me, that hurts. I see, that must be Odin's sword. Zoro cuts Prometheus multiple times, so he has trouble helping Big Mom, and then during chapter 1010, Zoro tells Law what he's about to do is the limit of his ability. He tells Kaido, who is going to smash Luffy's brains or heart, that that's his captain, and if he wants to crush anyone's skull, he'll have to start with Zoro. So epic. He uses Demon Aura 9-sword style Asura Blades Drawn, Dead Man's Game. Yes, it's a long name, but it's useful to pay attention to Zoro's attacks. He uses words like Demon, and Asura was a class of beings who opposed the Vedic gods. Like the name Enma, Zoro plays up this underworld demon spin for himself through his attacks. At this point, Kaido and Law are shocked that Zoro succeeds in cutting him across the chest. And at that point, Kaido notices that Zoro is a Conqueror's Haki user as well, but like Luffy, unaware of his true fruit, Zoro just says he has no idea what Kaido is talking about before he falls to the ground. Kaido praises him, saying he did enough. The wound will remain with him, like Odin's attacks did. This shows how impressively strong Zoro with Enma is, enough to leave a lasting wound on a mythical zone user one dubbed the strongest creature in the world. Considering this, it wouldn't be a shocker if Zoro had the help of a mythical zone to do it. And that's not taking anything away from Zoro, because if you think about it, Kaido definitely had the help of a mythical zone to defend his attack. And let's not forget about how before this, Zoro blocked Conquest of the Sea, a combo attack by Big Mom and Kaido. It was a bone-chilling moment. Amazing. He saved 3 Supernova captains by blocking the 2 Yonkos combo attack and still had the energy to drop a lasting wound on Kaido and even get his praise. Crazy stuff. And then, as if impressing everyone, blocking a Yonko combo attack and permanently wounding Kaido wasn't enough, Zoro is temporarily healed later and goes on to fight King, the Yonko commander with the highest known bounty, a whopping 1.39 billion berries. Hilariously enough, while he's fighting King, he also has the energy to promise to kill Sanji if he stops being himself after the latter unleashes his finisher on Queen. Later, as Zoro is thinking he needs to find out what race King is if he hopes to defeat him, Enma starts going off, responding to Hiyori's shamisen playing. The sword causes Zoro to scream in pain as his arm shrivels up. Clearly, this sword has a will of its own, more so than we've seen with any other weapon. Zoro straight up tells it, like he's talking to a misbehaving pet, "Who gave you permission to unleash your power, Enma?" King even comments, "What's wrong, having an argument?" Queen then tells us that King is a Lunarian, a monster capable of surviving in any natural environment, and even adds, in the distant past, his people were known as gods. So this goes perfectly with what we were talking about. Zoro's attacks position him as a demon opposing gods, and here he has to cut down, in a sense, a god. Zoro continues to talk to Enma, telling it to wait, stop. Again, like a person trying to tame their pet or a wild animal. When he takes advantage of the weird situation, King even says, "A swordsman held back by his own sword, that's a new one." Again, showing that this is not normal for swords to have this much of a personality, this much of a will. King, as the strongest commander of the strongest creature in the world, would have had ample opportunity to see something like this, if it was just a weapon thing and not a special devil fruit thing. Zoro then goes on to treat all his swords like his friends, while King is surprised that he died just to save his sword. During his flashback, Zoro is told by the old man of the village, aka the master swordsmith, that a sword has its own personality. A swordsman must master it and bend it to his will. So some might assume that this is what's happening with Enma, but I hope I've shown Enma as a special case, and in my view, it's done things that are well beyond explaining away by saying all swords have a personality. He tells Zoro in the flashback that there was one blade he crafted when he was a young man. It was the greatest weapon he ever made. Its disposition was deadly serious. Just holding it in your hand sent a shiver down the spine. So I gave that masterpiece the name of the king who watches over hell, the king of the underworld, Enma. And back to the present, Zoro sees the aura Enma is giving off, even while he's not touching it. He doesn't see that with the other swords. Like Zone Devil Fruit's blacksmith Shimotsuki Kozaburo says a great blade can see into a person and chooses only the swordsman who best suits it. And come on, would it not be perfect for Zoro's demon theme and for Enma's underworld theme for them both to be associated with a devil fruit? Zoro concludes that Enma came to him so it could test him. Zoro says it was his strength that was lacking rather than the sword being wicked. Rather than trying to limit it, Zoro allows it to drain as much haki as it wants, asking it, "Odin wielded you as though you were light as a feather, Enma?" Zoro remarks if he has to keep exuding haki like this, it'll kill him, but then he says no, that's perfect. Because of so much Conqueror's haki being released, surrounding beast pirates pass out and King remarks to Zoro, "So you intend to be a king?" Like I said, New Era Dark King Zoro has to be a thing. Zoro uses attacks with King of Hell in the title against King, referencing Enma. The final one, which finishes King off, is called King of Hell 3-Sword Serpent 103 Mercies Dragon Damnation. Afterwards, Zoro says, "Guess I might as well become the King of Hell," and then has enough energy to create another sword slash so powerful that it sends him flying back to the island. Now, all of this alone would be enough, in my opinion, to warrant a Zoro sword has the King of Hell Devil Fruit theory. But possibly the biggest proof comes next. During chapter 1038, we see something truly unique for One Piece. We see Zoro, who remember took medicine that would temporarily relieve his pain from the Yonko fight so he could fight King, but then the pain would come back with a vengeance even worse, and that's not counting all the new damage he accumulated from the King fight. So he must be as near to death as you can get. And that's when it happens. He sees what looks like the Grim Reaper. It appears before him as Zoro remarks, "What's going on? My body won't move. No, stop it, don't do it." And this led to theories that maybe he's hallucinating and it's Brook coming to help, which wasn't the case. Or maybe he's so weak, he's just hallucinating, which wouldn't make sense to me either. Oda wouldn't throw in something like that only to later say it was a complete hallucination. Like, what's the point of that? Then there's a possibility that it is the Grim Reaper coming to collect Zoro's life, but that wouldn't make sense either from what we've seen in One Piece. There haven't really been any real gods aside from godly devil fruits and people. So for me, the best explanation is that this is the manifestation of Enma's King of the Underworld Devil Fruit. And one possibility is that we finally see the figure because it has undergone awakening. Just like we didn't know Luffy had the Sun God Fruit until he underwent awakening. This to me would explain all of the inconsistencies with why was Enma so different from other swords to what is the Grim Reaper figure. So let me know your thoughts. Do you agree that it's possible or even likely that Oda gave Zoro's new sword a mythical zone fruit, as he himself said he'd like to do? Or do you think there's another explanation for all of these crazy events surrounding Zoro during the Wano arc? And if so, what are the explanations? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter, especially about the Grim Reaper. Unless proven otherwise, I honestly believe that this theory makes a lot of sense, but we'll have to wait and see to know for sure. And now we come to Sanji and his Devil Fruit powers. You might have noticed that like Zoro, Sanji can swim, and so yes, like with Zoro, his Devil Fruit powers are less straightforward than just eating a Devil Fruit. Now in the same SBS where Oda revealed Zoro's sword would have the Fish Fruit model Azure Dragon, he also reveals that Sanji would have Senior Pink's Devil Fruit, the Swim Fruit. We also saw this specific power duplicated in the Seraphim S Shark. I wonder if that could have been a little clue from Oda that Sanji's Devil Fruit powers too would be the result of scientific modification. We saw his unbelievable superhuman powers at work during the Wano arc. First of all, it's worth mentioning the fact that even before this arc where his superhuman powers just got ridiculous, his leg would seemingly catch on fire when he attacked people. I don't have to point out that that is not a normal trait by any means. Then he uses the flame and force kick to send Queen's giant dinosaur head spinning like a helicopter. He outlines his awakened scientific powers himself: exoskeleton, muscle strength, and mobile speed. He's even able to overlay the exoskeleton with finely honed armament haki to create tougher and hotter flames. The flames turn from normal color to blue, and ultimately he lands a finishing attack using his newly awakened powers and blue flames to defeat Queen. And before that, he took a dinosaur-wielded blade to the neck, and his neck was fine and the blade shattered. It's honestly an insane level of durability he gained, and it made his fight against Queen seem like a cakewalk compared to Zoro's fight against King. Not to mention that he's so fast now that he can be practically invisible when he wants to. But even if we say, okay, genetic manipulation led to super strength, speed, and durability, that still doesn't explain his fire powers. I mean, even before the hotter blue flames, people were asking Oda, how Sanji's leg could withstand the heat while the same heat would scorch his targets. Oda replied that the attack burns hot, but Sanji's heart burns hotter. Keep that in mind as we move forward. When Queen sees the fire produced by Sanji, he says only Lunarians can create fire at will like that, but Sanji just replies it's due to his passion. Now yes, this has led many to speculate that Sanji has Lunarian DNA because of his genetic manipulation, which is possible even if it works differently. For instance, for Lunarians, they say that they have near invulnerability while the flame burns on their back, but not when it goes out. We saw that Sanji can tank attacks like he has invulnerability even when no parts of his body are on fire, while the Seraphims, which were made using Lunarian DNA, do have the flames on the back rule, not to mention wings. Thus, it may be more likely that for Sanji, they somehow succeeded in imitating a fire-based devil fruit power. After all, Queen was wrong. It's not only Lunarians that can create fire like that. It is devil fruit users too, like Ace for one. Now, am I saying it had to be the flame fruit? No, but I will say that that would work very well with what Oda said, specifically that Sanji's heart burns hotter than his leg. If he meant that literally and not figuratively as most people take it, then all of a sudden this theory makes a lot of sense. Because we know flame fruit users like Ace and Sabo can set their bodies, including their hearts, ablaze. Hashtag RIP Rengoku. And if you enjoyed learning more about characters like Sanji and Zoro, then you won't want to miss my Oda finally revealed Zoro's father and his father's devil fruit video, link on screen right now. Like and subscribe to help us reach our insane goal of 2 million subscribers here on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next one.